So I don't want to talk about Kickstarter too much. I want to ask you guys one more question about it, and then we'll move on to the games themselves. But I want to just check in on the status of your Kickstarters right now. Chris, I'm going to say kudos to you, dude. This is pretty amazing. So you started out, you had a $500,000 goal. You're currently at 2,134,000. So you're funded more than 4 times over.
Yeah.
Have you been surprised by the response? I mean, do you have more money than you know what to do at this point, or what?
Oh yeah, well, so also, Gary, you may not have, I'm not sure if you checked, but it's a lot more than 2. So basically, when we ran the crowdfunding, the primary amount of crowdfunding has been directly on the Rocket Space Industries side. It hasn't been on Kickstarter.
Oh, so the Kickstarter part is just a portion of the whole total?
We're basically almost at 7 million. I'm
what?
Doing a quick recap.
Why are you even here? I would be on a beach in Belize. This is crazy.
No, I actually want to make a game, and unfortunately, even $7 million isn't enough for it. No, so we're at $6,942,000. So we'll be at 7 million in the next week or so.
And then how does that track with what you originally felt like you needed to make? Is that more than you felt like you needed? Are you going to be able to scale the game up? Like, how does that work?
Well, definitely I can add more detail, but essentially I did a deal with, I'd already sort of lined up private equity for the game, because the game I'm making I can't make for $2 million or $3 million. It's more than that. But I lined up some private equity, and the crowdfunding was meant to be a portion of the funding, not all the funding. And essentially the crowdfunding was sort of demonstrating demand, that there's an audience, because I'm dealing with people that, everyone's like, even though they kind of believe it, you sort of have to prove to them that there's the audience there. And so that's one thing that you can do on the crowdfunding side. But for me, it's been great, because what it really means I can do is I can sort of have a lot more content in the world at the beginning. So like the downside of the approach I'm taking versus what David's taking with Elite is that, a lot of my sort of world is crafted, right? So a lot of the way, some of the really cool stuff about Elite is it's sort of procedural, and it lets you have this massive universe that you can explore around. And, I'm sort of taking it from a different angle, which is I'm sort of crafting, much more sort of specific content and story content. And so what that means is my world is naturally going to be smaller than David's world, because his is sort of a big, huge procedural world. And, there's, like I said, that's why I think both games have their place, and there's going to be people that will play both and have a good time playing both. About 10 days into our own crowdfunding on our campaign, we sort of also opened up Kickstarter, because there's definitely an audience on Kickstarter that they hang together, they like the fun games, they it's almost like they love to pick the games they want to fund. And I see groups of people move from one project to another project on Kickstarter, and I look at a lot of my backers, and they all, they fund Elite and 10 other projects. So there's definitely sort of a separate ecosystem in Kickstarter that does it. So we folded in Kickstarter, and Kickstarter was approximately, just under a third of the money that we raised. But, for me, all of that's great. I mean, it's just, what's really nice about this whole thing is you're cutting out the publisher, because all publishers do is give you money for the game. They go, I think you'll have lots of people pay you for this game, so I'm going to front the game. I'm going to front you the money, and I'm going to take, basically I'm going to own it and control it, and I'll give you a little cut of it. And so if you can cut that out, then from someone that's a creative and a developer, it's much better, because, you're still selling to the same people, but you have control.
You have the kind of problems that I want to have. Too many people trying to give me money all at once. That's a good problem to have. David, I want to check in with your Kickstarter. It looks like you're basically kind of at the halfway mark, right? You launched about a month ago, and it looks like you're about halfway towards your funding goal, with 30 days left to go. It's like, what do you do at the halfway mark, other than little events like this to try and promote the game? Obviously, you don't just sit back and hope the totalizer kind of reaches where you want it to go. Is it an active process? What are you trying to do to make sure you hit your goal at this point?
Oh, absolutely. We've been putting content up on the site all the time. We've got development diaries, which we've just done the second one of. And also, we're looking to see what people are, what people are querying, what people are most concerned about, most interested about, and trying to make sure we answer those things. But also trying to get across, both how we make the game, where we are now, and what things in the game that we really care about. And really, that is great, because it really vindicates the, or not, the thinking, seeing how people respond to what we're doing in the game. The one we recently put up was about how we expect the galaxy to evolve. And it evolves very, very slowly, but it evolves in a way that is sort of very dependent on how the players play. So elements like that all feed into the game design, and we are being very sort of aware of what people are saying in terms of the game design, and we expect that to happen. We expect the work to actually start once we get funding. I mean, that's the great challenge, and I'm sure that's where Chris is now, thinking, right, we've got to make this thing, we've got to deliver. That's the challenge, but that's what we're here for.
I mean, like you said, it obviously is very attractive to get rid of the old publisher model for all kinds of reasons I can imagine. But like, do you feel more pressure? Is it more scary feeling directly responsible to 100,000 game player stakeholders, or to just like one John Riccitiello type character? Like, what's actually scarier to you?
Well, I think it's a huge responsibility. I mean, we've tried it at Frontier a few times now. You've possibly seen the Lost Winds games, which have done pretty good for us in terms of numbers. They've done very well. I mean, they're games we're very proud of. And what we've got to do is it's have a mentality where you do have to make sure the quality's there, the delivery's there, and those things really, really important to the game. But actually, it's easier than I'd expect in many ways, and in some ways harder than expect, where you as you say, you don't have the person sort of shouting in your ear, but actually your own sort of judge of quality is such a strong driver, wanting to do something that's really good. I've had bad publisher arrangements in the past, which have been an absolute nightmare, and those, especially for this kind of game, are what is really the problem. That's the way you end up with bad games, where you have people in conflict.
So, Chris, it's good that I've got you both on the line right now, because you are in kind of different stages of your evolution right now. You're already kind of sitting on a huge pile of cash. You've had a wildly successful Kickstarter. You're wildly overfunded. And right next to you is David, who's right in the middle of, like, let's say, the halfway point, both in terms of time and the funding goals he has for Elite. Do you have any advice from him at this point? Like, how does he get to where he wants to in the home stretch in these last 30 days? What should he be doing?
First of all, by the way, on your previous question about whether it's more scary dealing with John Riccitiello or the crowd, John Riccitiello is a teddy bear. So the thing is that the crowd, there's a lot of them, and I really feel the pressure, and I think David probably will do too. Yeah. Is we've got to deliver. We can't, I can, you can fob off a publisher. You can be like, hey, we're going to run late on this milestone, and at the end of the day, as long as your relationship's mostly good and the publisher really kind of wants your game, they'll give you a bunch of slack. Whereas with the crowd, I feel like if I'm late on a milestone or late on something, I'm going to have a really good reason for them, and I'm going to have to explain it to them and all that sort of stuff, because it's 100,000 people. There's some energy with the crowd that makes you want to, you feel like you can't really slide on it. But I would say the biggest thing that I noticed. By the way, I apologize. This is Monday's garbage pickup, so you're hearing a massive garbage truck outside.
Well, you're picking up all your extra cash and you don't know what to do with?
Oh, no. Trust me, we know the budgets of these kind of games. I mean, maybe a lot by crowdfunding standards, but by making a high-end AAA game, it's not really that much money. But no, I would say the biggest thing is that my experiences on the crowdfunding is really that the things that are important are the constant sort of back and forth with the community. Interacting with them, which David's doing, taking on their suggestions. I mean, they're not designing the game, but you should certainly listen to them. And you've got like this great free focus group that loves, they believe in what you're doing. So they're the best people. They're much better than a publishing executive to listen to, because the publishing executive really isn't your audience. This is your audience. So that's really important. And they want frequent updates. So, I mean, my big advice, it's more difficult for David because he's in the middle of it, but I would say anyone that's doing crowdfunding, I mean, I didn't do this either myself, if I was ever doing it again, I would prepare a hell of a lot more content up front, and then I would release it over the campaign, because everyone wants something every day. I mean, that is the downside of the internet culture, the 24/7. I mean, first of all, David's got it, I've got it, we've got backers all around the world. So they don't care whether it's like the middle of the night for us or it's the weekend. It's like they literally want someone to interact with them every single second of the day. And so, that's pretty exhausting. And to a certain level, I think that both of us don't mind it, because it's really cool to have people that just love this game and are willing to give us money to make it happen. But it's still pretty exhausting. So, teeing up content it's not easy, right? It's like, well, David, we both made games for a long time. Making, having stuff that we're proud of to show people takes time. You can't do it in an hour. So everyone's like, where's my update today? Or where's my video? And and that's difficult to do. I mean, we try and do it, but I do think that there's a level of that people don't necessarily understand how much work it takes to do that. And David's doing it. I did a bunch of it, but I would say that kind of stuff, the more that you do, the better. And then the last thing I would say that was really insightful or useful for me was that there were some situations where we actually reached back out to the community and asked them, say, hey, we can go left or right here. What would you like? We actually ran quite a few polls with our community. Like for instance, we have a lot of add-ons, and I think that was the reason why it let us raise more money, was because we sort of made this sort of microtransaction, if you will, inside the crowdfunding side. Not so much because that's necessarily how we plan to make a vast amount of money once the game happens, but it was sort of a way to almost gamify the crowdfunding, and people were kind of into it. They wanted to collect the different ships and all the rest of the stuff. And it helped us drive our average pledge up.
David, I think it's kind of fascinating that both of you guys are working on games where a big aspect of the design is
I'm going to close my window.
Trade and supply and demand, and both of you guys are kind of getting a real-time lesson in a new kind of economics, even as you build these games. Are you having a similar journey to Chris in terms of figuring out what kind of incentives and what kinds of tiers your backers will respond to, and overall, do you feel like you're having more of a direct conversation with your audience as you're building the game than you would in a traditional publishing arrangement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've also added tiers that you can add on to your pledge of things like whether it's a model spaceship or T-shirts, mugs, all that sort of thing. With all of those things, I mean, I think one of the things that I think we weren't as prepared for Kickstarter as we definitely should have been with hindsight. But I think that's going to be true with everybody, in the sense that you always want more preparation. Had we been more prepared, we'd still want to have been more prepared with material ready to go. So, I mean, what I every day I think is how amazing the amount of support that have come from fans of the game. And it's really heartening to see the positivity towards the game, the love for the game, how much people care about it. And they've spent a lot of their time, for which I'm eternally grateful, evangelizing the game on sites to their friends and all that sort of thing. It's great to see how word of mouth is working, and very heartening. I mean, the thing here is we are building the game for ourselves. And I feel for a while, you often building a game for a particular market when you're with a publisher. They say, oh, we're aiming for this target market. And so that slightly decouples you from judging, well, how difficult do I want to make it? How big a surprise do I want it to be? How hard do I want it to be able to do this, or whatever? What kind of involvement do I want with the game? Do I want it to be purely multiplayer? Do I want single player? All of these sort of things are things that it's been very, very clear from the fans what they really want, what they care about. And interesting, the platforms that people are talking about are actually slightly different to what we're usually used to delivering on. So all of these things are different, and I absolutely agree with Chris. Talking about sort of bringing back the PC game. It's amazing how much in this industry is to some extent fashion-led, in the sense that people see PC games performing slightly less, and so assume the PC game is dead. But then you start to think, well, what is the PC? Is a tablet you carry around that's running a sort of like a PC? It just changes with time, and so does the audience. But I know a lot of people who are gamers in the original sense, who feel they've been left out. And it's those people that I think we have a chance here of really sort of bringing back to the fore, if you like.